Right now, as you watch this, roughly 100,000 people around the world are sitting on a toilet. You'll be one of them today. You were one yesterday. You will be one every single day until you die. It is the most repetitive thing your body does, and it is the one thing the history books never mention. So here is the question nobody asks. What did a human being do about this 300,000 years ago? Before paper, before plumbing, before the word privacy meant anything at all. The answer is not what you are imagining, because ancient humans did not have a sanitation problem. We invented that, and the moment we invented it, it very nearly destroyed us. Picture a prehistoric camp, and your brain fills in filth, flies, waste everywhere. A smell you could taste from 100 meters away. That picture is wrong, and the reason is almost stupidly simple. They moved. A hunter-gatherer band picks up and relocates every 10 to 20 days, sometimes sooner. You walk away from the problem before the problem becomes a problem. 30 people moving constantly across a landscape produce less concentrated waste than one modern apartment building produces in an afternoon. Filth is not what happens when you have no toilets. Filth is what happens when you stop walking. Hold that thought, because we are coming back to it, and it is going to be worse than you think. Let's deal with the obvious question first. What did they wipe with? The honest answer is whatever was within arm's reach, and some of it was genuinely better than what you use. The best option in the northern world was sphagnum moss. It is a bog moss, and it can hold up to 20 times its own weight in liquid. It is also mildly antiseptic because it releases compounds that acidify its surroundings and inhibit bacterial growth. That is not folklore. Sphagnum was harvested by the ton and used as wound dressing in field hospitals during the First World War, because it outperformed cotton, and there was not enough cotton to go around. Ancient humans across half the planet were wiping with a material that armies would later use to pack bullet wounds. Where there was no moss, there were leaves, and the choice mattered enormously. Get it wrong, and you have introduced a plant irritant to the worst possible place. That knowledge, which leaf is safe in which season, is exactly the kind of thing a child learns without ever being formally taught. There was grass, there was snow, which is unpleasant but effective and self-cleaning. There was water, wherever water was available, and water remains the preferred method for the majority of the human population today. In coastal regions, shells, and uncomfortably often, a smooth stone. We know about that last one for certain because the Greeks left them behind. They are called peswai, small, rounded ceramic fragments, worn smooth at the edges, recovered in quantity from the drains of ancient latrines. And archaeologists have found examples where somebody scratched the name of a personal enemy into the surface first. Think about that level of pettiness for a moment. You are so angry at a man that you inscribe his name on a piece of broken pottery, specifically so that you can wipe yourself with his face. The Romans went in a different direction, and it is arguably worse. Their public latrines had a device called a xylospongium, a natural sea sponge fixed to the end of a wooden stick. You used it, you rinsed it in a channel of running water, or a bucket of salt water or vinegar, and you left it in the alcove for the next person, and there were no stalls. Roman public latrines were long stone benches with 20 holes cut in a row, and people sat shoulder to shoulder discussing business and politics while sharing a communal sponge. Privacy in the bathroom is not an ancient human value. It is a modern invention, and a very recent one. Now here is something that will change how you think about your own bathroom. Every human being on Earth, for the entire history of our species, squatted. The seated toilet is about 150 years old, and the squat is anatomically superior, for a reason most people have never heard. There is a muscle called the puborectalis that loops around your rectum like a sling and pulls it into a kink. That kink is what keeps you continent while you walk around all day, and it is supposed to release when you go. When you sit on a chair, the angle only partially opens, so you have to generate pressure to compensate. When you squat fully, with your knees above your hips, the sling relaxes and the passage straightens out. Populations that still squat show dramatically lower rates of hemorrhoids, and there is a good argument that chronic straining contributes to diverticular disease as well. You are using a device that requires you to work against your own anatomy, and then wondering why a category of extremely common modern complaints exists at all. Your ancestors had this solved. We unsolved it, for the sake of a chair. But how do we actually know any of this? because there is a branch of archaeology that specializes in exactly one thing: fossilized human excrement. The technical term is coprolites, and they are genuinely one of the most valuable categories of object in the entire archaeological record. A stone tool tells you what somebody could make. A coprolite tells you what they ate last Tuesday, what parasites were living inside them, which medicinal plants they were chewing, whether their diet changed with the seasons, and whose DNA they were carrying. In the Paisley Caves in the high desert of Oregon, researchers recovered human coprolites dated to roughly 14,300 years old, preserved by the extraordinary dryness of the site. They contained human mitochondrial DNA. Those samples are among the oldest direct evidence of human beings anywhere in the Americas. An entire chapter in the peopling of a continent rests on preserved feces in a dry cave. And then there is York, in England. In 1972, workers digging the foundations of a bank uncovered a single intact stool from the 9th century, roughly 20 centimeters long, left behind by a Viking. It is displayed in a museum. It has been insured. It contained bran and cereal husks, telling us the man ate a diet heavy in coarse grain, and it was riddled with the eggs of intestinal worms. Which brings us to the part nobody wants to hear. Essentially, everyone had worms: whipworm, roundworm, tapeworm. Their eggs are astonishingly durable. They survive for thousands of years in the right conditions, and they turn up in coprolites from nearly every ancient population we have ever sampled, on every inhabited continent. The tapeworm story is the strangest one. For a long time we assumed humans acquired tapeworms from domesticated cattle and pigs, which would date the infection to roughly 10,000 years ago. Then geneticists sequenced the parasites themselves, and the answer came back inverted. Human tapeworm lineages split off far earlier than domestication, and they are most closely related to strains carried by African carnivores, meaning we did not get them from our livestock. We got them from scavenging and hunting the same animals as hyenas and lions, hundreds of thousands of years before anybody owned a cow. Your ancestors caught their parasites competing with predators for meat. And there is one more thing about this that we almost never consider, and it is the reason this was a genuinely dangerous moment in a prehistoric day. To relieve yourself, you walk away from the group. You go beyond the firelight. You put down whatever you are carrying. You crouch low. You become immobile. Your hands are occupied, and your field of vision drops to knee height in tall grass. You have just made yourself the single easiest target you will be all day. Among the Hadza of Tanzania today, people walk away from camp for exactly this, but never far, and never out of earshot. The distance is a quiet negotiation between dignity and the entirely reasonable possibility of being killed. That is what this ordinary act cost for most of human history. Not embarrassment, risk. So if hunter-gatherers were relatively clean, parasitized but functional, and constantly moving, where did the real catastrophe come from? From us. From agriculture. Around 12,000 years ago, human beings did something no species had done before. We stopped walking away. We built permanent settlements. We stayed in one place for years, then for generations, and we did it alongside domesticated animals, which meant sharing our living space with the waste of cattle, pigs, goats, sheep, and chickens, as well as our own. The waste stopped leaving. It went into the ground, and the ground fed the water. The skeletons record the result with brutal clarity. Compare the bones of late hunter-gatherers with the farmers who replaced them in the same regions, and the farmers are shorter. Their teeth are worse. Their bones show more infection, more anemia, and more of the growth arrest lines that record childhood illness and hunger. Whole categories of disease appear that had no way of existing before. Cholera requires dense populations drinking downstream of their own sewage. Typhoid requires a shared contaminated water supply. Measles requires a permanently packed host population to keep circulating without burning out. None of these could have survived in a world of 30-person bands walking across a landscape. They are not ancient enemies. They are artifacts of settlement, and they arrived with it. We did not discover hygiene. We created the conditions that made hygiene necessary, and then spent 10,000 years frantically trying to catch up. And you can watch the catching up begin, almost immediately, in stone. At Skara Brae in Orkney, a village occupied around 5,000 years ago, small chambers built into the thickness of the house walls sit directly above a drain system that runs beneath the entire settlement and out toward the sea. That is indoor plumbing in the Neolithic, on a treeless island in the North Atlantic. At Mohenjo-daro, in the Indus Valley, most houses had a bathing platform and a waste channel feeding covered street drains maintained at municipal scale 4,500 years ago. Those are not luxuries, they are emergency responses. The moment human beings crowded together, somebody had to invent the sewer, and they did it independently, again and again, all over the world. And still, catching up took almost all of the 10,000 years. In the summer of 1858, the River Thames, carrying the untreated waste of 2.5 million Londoners, got hot. The stench was so overwhelming that Parliament, sitting directly on the riverbank, soaked its curtains in lime chloride and seriously debated relocating the government out of the city. They called it the Great Stink. It is the reason London built a sewer system. Not disease, not science. Smell, in a building where powerful men had to sit and breathe it. That was 167 years ago. Modern sanitation, the single greatest life-extending technology our species has ever produced, is younger than the photograph. It has saved more lives than antibiotics and vaccines combined, and most people cannot name a single person who built it. So the next time you close a bathroom door, understand what you are actually doing. You are performing an act that has not changed in 300,000 years, in a posture your body was never designed for, in a room that exists because we forgot how to walk away. Your ancestors solved this problem by leaving. We solved it by building a city so foul that it forced kings to act.